trustworthy. And he talks about being real and honest. It says to be transparent. And in order for you to be authentic and real, you really have to be willing to be transformed. You have to be willing to go through a dramatic change in your life that sometimes changes your atmosphere and your character. And a scripture I'm going to give you is Proverbs 27:19. It says, as a face is reflected in the water, so the heart reflects the real person. And then Proverbs 11:19 says, genuine righteousness leads to life. So if you can, just grab the hand of someone next to you so we can connect. As women, we wear many masks, and oftentimes we feel like we cannot really show our authentic self and our real feelings to others around us. But we need to do that. Because if we're willing to do that and willing to be transformed, completely authentic, this is where we'll grow in leadership. This is where we'll connect with each other. Because we'll really reflect our heart in the genuine person that we are. I just ask this morning, Lord, that you would just come in this place and just gather around the men and women that are here this morning. We're coming this morning just to gain a little closer understanding of what authentic leadership is. I ask this morning that the speakers that have come and they've prepared what they're going to speak about, that you would just be with them. And that really that you would come inside of them and that they would speak their heartfelt wisdom. That they would provide the things that have really helped them to become an authentic leader. We get up early in the morning and we come here, but we are coming to gain some understanding. We're coming to connect. We're coming to reflect. And hopefully when we leave, that we've gained something, that we're just better people. Please bless the hands that have prepared the food for us this morning and all of those that have set up this place for us today. We just thank you. We just bless you. All these things we ask in your son's name. Amen. Amen. And with that, authentic leadership, keeping it real, we'd like to bring up Sherelle Jackson. They're doing something to her. I think they're doing something to her.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for taking time out to come this morning at 7 a.m. early. You could have gotten a little more sleep, or maybe got your workout on. I'm just saying. But instead, you chose to spend the morning with us, and I'm grateful, so I thank you so much. As Maria said, authenticity is near and dear to my heart. And I think that it is so important that we are comfortable in who we are and that we're able to exhibit our true selves when we speak with one another. And sometimes authenticity can yield us very positive gain, but other times authenticity can yield us a negative experience because we may be keeping it too real. So today we will be embarking upon exploring authenticity, how to keep it real, how to be true to yourself and not dilute who you are, how to set boundaries, how to be able to actually say what you mean and mean what you say, how to deal with conflict, how to be honest even when you're facing the possibility of losing a relationship, how to say what it is that you really want to say even when you're afraid that it might yield confrontation, how to really be authentic and keep it real. So we're going to do this a little bit different today for those of you who've been here. When Dr. Dina and I get on the stage and start the Q&A, it's going to be an interactive experience. meaning that you're gonna have an opportunity to ask questions throughout our interview. And to the extent that we have things that we're talking about, there's this burning thought that comes to you, be unafraid to interject, raise your hand, do it politely and gracefully. But don't let a word that you have to say go unspoken. Because today, I want you to have an authentic experience. And in order for you to do that, I need you to be unafraid to ask the questions that you want to ask. Deal? Yeah. Well, welcome to Leadership in Heels, everybody. How many of you are here for the very first time? That's bananas to me. That's bananas. Thank you so much. I'm so excited about the fact that you're here. So we want to just deal with some housekeeping items first. First, I want to ask each of you, can you silence your cell phones? And I also want to ask you, how many of you are on social media? Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook? All right. So log on to Facebook and check in at the Leadership in Heels event. Be sure to follow me on Leadership in Heels on Facebook and on Instagram. And I'm at Sherelle J on Twitter. And also all of our social media handles are actually on your table toppers in the middle of the table. So the social media handles are there for those of you who would like to join us on social media. I would truly appreciate it throughout the event. And if you hear something amazing or dynamic, if you hear something that really motivates and inspires you to be able to move the needle forward a little bit towards the destination that you're striving to reach, that you would tweet. And then also be sure and connect with me on LinkedIn. I want to also ask that we be kind to one another throughout this day. And one of the things that I mean by that is when we are at a point where we're doing our Q&A, that you be thoughtful about your question and that you be open about your objective. For those of you who have comments about the event, I would really, really, really appreciate it if you would utilize your comment card before you leave. So if you have to leave before 9 a.m., please take a moment to fill out the comment card. Let us know what it is that we can do to improve your experience at a Leadership in Heels event. Now I have to take a pause and say, there's two people sitting alone and we don't do alone at Leadership in Heels. So, what I need you guys to do is to join in at another table so that you're not by yourself. Because this is an interactive experience and you can't interact if you're sitting alone. So, come on. Virgie, I know you like to be alone all by yourself. Come on down to the front. There's a seat right here. You should be in the front row. Go to the front, go to the front. We're going to put Virgie on the spot. So I just want to tell you guys a little bit about me, since there's so many people here who have never been here before. My name is Sherelle Jackson, and I am the founder and CEO of Leadership in Heels. I'm also a partner and the Chief Financial and Operating Officer of Sklar Milner, a regional CPA firm headquartered here in Newport Beach. I've been with the firm for 18 years, and it is a dynamic place where we service all industries throughout our world. We do forensic accounting, business management, we do general accounting, of course, tax and audit work, financial services, and wealth management. And it has been an amazing ride. I have all areas of operations as my responsibility, and I've been with the firm for 18 years. I founded Leadership in Heels back in 2015, basically on a thread by a friend who asked me if I would be willing to use my voice to make a difference in the lives of others outside of the normal speaking engagements that I do throughout the year. And I couldn't help but say yes, because I recognize that that's my purpose. So I decided to set a date based on her pressure and send out an email to a few of my friends, and lo and behold, people like you showed up. And so we've been doing it ever since. But the purpose of Leadership in Heels is to bridge the gap between our personal and our professional lives. So often we are one person at home and another person at work, and then we might even have a triple personality where we're somebody else in the community and with our friends. And what I am encouraging each of us to do is to bridge our authentic self, to focus on who it is that we truly want to be, and more importantly, what it is that we truly want to do in our lives. And our goal is to provide you with dynamic speakers, panelists, and interviews that will inspire you and motivate you, but more importantly, provide you some tangible tools that you can use to pivot yourself forward in whatever area of focus that you truly desire to grow in. And so Leadership in Heels is all-encompassing. It's about your personal and professional growth. And it is an experience that I hope that you will not only utilize for yourself, but you will share with others. And it's just been an amazing experience. I am so grateful and blessed to have an opportunity to come before you periodically and share some of the things that I've learned and things that I'm continuing to work on. Authentic leadership in and of itself is going to be a great experience for me because I am a keep it real girl. However, I got some rough edges and I need to work on doing that in a more graceful way. So it's not just about keeping it real, but it's how do you do that in an effective way that yields you a positive outcome. Sometimes we don't say what it is that we want to say because we're afraid. Sometimes we say it in a way that can be offensive because we're afraid. Sometimes we don't say what we want to say because we don't want to hurt someone. Sometimes we don't say what we want to say because we're hurting. Sometimes we don't say what we want to say because we're not sure of how it will affect the person who we have to say it to. Sometimes we don't say what we want to say because just getting the words out might affect us. There are so many things that we are not sharing with one another because of fear. And my goal today is to be able to help us to move past that. I encourage you to think about what it is that you are not being truly authentic about in your own life. And then as you go into your table exercise today, you dialogue about that. And that you are intentional about asking questions of Dr. Dina and I, as well as each and every person in this audience who can contribute to our individual growth, so that you can walk away clear on what your next move will be. I also want to acknowledge a few amazing people. First, I want to acknowledge Zamora Escobar. I had the privilege of speaking at an Newport Beach Chamber event just a few months ago. And it was an outstanding event. And at that event, I met some amazing people. So please network today because there are amazing people in this room. Literally. How many of you are amazing? I'm just saying. So, if you don't walk away with a new relationship, a business card, a contact, or an opportunity, shame on you. You missed the purpose of coming to Leadership in Heels, or at least one of them. So I want you to do that. But I met Zamora Escobar, an amazing person. And she willingly volunteered to provide her services to us in those black velvet goodie bags on your table. So be sure and grab a goodie bag. Gentlemen, give it to you, girl. It's for the ladies in the room. Zamora also gave me an opportunity to speak this past weekend at a really cute and quaint tea house in Seal Beach. It was the most dynamic experience. I didn't have an opportunity to tell her thank you on Sunday, but thank you so much for allowing me to participate in a panel where we truly kept it real. It was such an experience to be able to talk about things that matter to women. There was a dynamic panel of women from all different genres of life and all different ages, all different backgrounds and all different cultures. And I am confident that each person there walked away full and excited about the next step. So thank you so much, Tamara. I also want to thank Michelle. Pronounce your last name, Michelle. Endo. Simple. Right in this stuff. Okay. Michelle Endo. Michelle has given us this Good Choice sushi gift bag with a value of $150. So, how many of you like sushi? That's what I'm saying. So, there's a beautiful gift bag over there that we're going to be raffling off, coupled with a few other raffle prizes. We have a wonderful journal, we have a Mackenzie Stewart beautiful vase, and you guys have an opportunity to win. So if you did not put your business card or fill out a contact card in the basket at the registration table, please be sure and do that. And last, but certainly not least, that wonderful centerpiece on your table that consists of flowers and that drop dead heel. Everybody knows I love shoes. Was done by my amazing mother. You know, I have to tell you, my mother, is a beautiful person, inside and out. My mother is the oldest daughter of 11 children. So can you imagine what that's like when you grow up raising kids and then you have some of your own, Jesus Christ. She gives of herself from the inside out to every person that she knows all the time. And authentically, I used to be so jealous of that because I wanted her all to myself. And she spreads herself way too thin. Apples don't fall far from trees, so I'm keeping it real. And I just want her to know, because sometimes the people who are the closest to us, Tanya, get the brunt of our character defects, and they're not always told how important they are and how much we love them and how much we value them and how much we appreciate them. So, Mother, I just want you to know authentically that I love you and I adore you. And I'm so grateful that you are my mother. Thank you. The force behind Leadership in Heels, and there are a team of people, but there are two people who have been with me from the very, very beginning, and that is Trina Fleming, who also will be our nonprofit today, and Deirdre Cuffey. And the effort and support and time and dedication that it takes to effectuate an event like this is just amazing. And I just show up, and they do this out of the kindness of their heart, and I'm just so grateful for them, not specifically for what you do for me, for Leadership in Heels, but what you do for me as a person. And I'm grateful. There's no monetary amount I can ever give you for your love and your kindness. So I say thank you. And God loves me so much, He just dropped little Miss Julianne in my life. And she came in, she's been working with me for just a little bit of a month or so, and just jumped right in with Deirdre and Trina as if she's been here from the beginning. And she and I have a little saying that's on my wall with a little Superwoman suit on that says #GSD. Everybody on my team knows what that means. We'll translate the S to stuff since we're in the room of companies, but we get stuff done. And Julianne just came in, and she is really a #GSD. So I have an amazing team of people, which is the point of this, in front of me and on the side of me. They certainly are not behind me. They literally are pulling me forward. So I'm grateful to each and every one of you. Thank you, and thank you for those of you involved. As you know, at Leadership in Heels, as I mentioned, we want to provide powerful themes that can help you pivot your life forward. And we also want to be able to provide a platform for women in business, so that they have an opportunity to be elevated and to share about what they're doing, but more importantly, to share about what they're doing and how it can impact your life. It is my desire to bring women to Leadership in Heels that can only make a difference in your life. And so we have two amazing women in business today, Ms. Sina Lopez and Annalisa Moscow. Co-founders of Creative Reserve. Annalisa and Sina Marie have a unique gift of designing experiences that create community and celebrate culture. They have worked on extensive projects such as the Sundance Film Festival, the Huntley Hotel, Cocktail Academy, and so many more. They are rock stars. They're going to share more about their passion for creating experiences that set the bar higher and higher for the event industry. And then you know that we also want to highlight nonprofits. And today's nonprofit is going to be represented by none other than my sister, my prayer partner, my friend, Ms. Trina Fleming, COO of WHW, and the board president of the Women's Business Institute. The Women's Business Institute was founded in 1999 by 16 Orange County women business owners who were inspired to donate their own money to provide funding for relevant business education to other women entrepreneurs. In other words, if you are looking to start a business, the Women's Business Institute is an organization you want to get connected with. These women partnered with the Orange County chapter of National Association of Women Business Owners, or NABO, and they're here today. The NABO ladies, where are you? So every entrepreneur in this room should be a member of NABO. And their mission was to empower local business women to obtain the skills to run and grow successful businesses. Today, the Women's Business Institute delivers this mission through funded programs for mentoring, business training, board appointments, and business pitch training, legislative education, and educational scholarships. So without further ado, you'll first hear from Ms. Trina Fleming, and right behind Trina, you'll hear from Sina and Alice.
Thank you so much, Sherelle. Good morning to everyone. Many of you know I have a desire burning to help individuals get and keep good jobs through WHW. But I also have a desire and a passion for women in business and women entrepreneurs. And the entrepreneurial appetites of women across the nation are actually at an all-time high, leading them to start approximately 1,200 new businesses every single day. Businesses that provide jobs and contribute to the economic growth of our country. And in Orange County, 30% of all businesses are owned by women. But while it may be the intention of many of these entrepreneurs in heels to build large and financially successful and stable businesses, the reality is that many will end up struggling as solopreneurs, wearing every hat, working to bring in the business, working to collect payments, running the business on their own, doing the business, doing the books, and in some cases scraping out just enough to pay themselves a decent wage, or worst case scenario, going out of business. While these gutsy women have the passion that it takes to start their own business, they often lack the critical skills necessary to make that business work for them and for their family. You see, passion, unfortunately, is just not always enough. Women-owned businesses tend to experience financial challenges and growth limits on a much larger scale than male-owned businesses. They start with less capital, they use their own credit, they lack successful mentors, and have more responsibilities at home on top of everything. Things like sales, raising funding, marketing, negotiating, hiring and managing employees, legal issues, financial issues, all of these have to be successfully addressed in order to build a successfully, financially, and stable business. It is the mission of the Women's Business Institute to provide funding for relevant business education and programs that support the success of Orange County's women business owners, to strengthen their wealth capacity creating, and to build a legacy of success for the future generation of women business owners. It has been proven that an investment in the success of women business owners spurs economic growth, creates jobs, leads to increased innovation. Successful women-owned and led businesses actually exhibit stronger financial performance as compared to exclusively male-owned businesses. And because women consumers control the majority of purchases, women-owned businesses understand and serve consumers better. This leads to increased sales and a higher level of consumer confidence. So why am I here today? Because I would like to ask you to consider getting to know more about the Women's Business Institute. Keep us on your radar of Orange County nonprofits and support Orange County women business owners with a financial donation to our organization. There's a brochure in your event materials, and that brochure has our website on it. You can make online donations through the website. And I want you to know that no gift is too small. But please remember that the impact will be great. And for those women entrepreneurs in the audience, I would like to say, stay on your game, keep going for that dream. The world needs the special gift that only you have. Thank you.
Michelle, thank you for your wonderful introduction. We just wanted to share with you a little bit about how and why we decided to start our own company and the huge role that authenticity has played in that for us. Dramatic change was mentioned earlier. I actually started a different company about 5 years ago and was in a leadership role with another partner. It took a few difficult years to realize that our values weren't aligned and that it really wasn't possible for us to lead together from an authentic place. So I made the difficult decision to leave, not really knowing what was next, and we'll get to where that next step came in.
Hi, so I'm Sierra Lopez, and I actually, a while ago, my mom, who many of you guys know, she's spoken here before, Panilla, she told me that it was really important to get in touch with what my mission in life was, and so I found out a few years ago that my mission is to be inspired by beauty and celebration and meaningful connection, and then create every opportunity to create more of that in the world around me. And so event production and the event industry is something that caught my eye. While I was still in college, and during that time I just set out to work for as many different people as possible, really find my niche in the industry, and I really never set out to actually own my own company. I really wanted to work for someone else, as it's a lot easier that way. So I ended up working as the right hand of a lot of companies, and when I met Anna, I was actually her event coordinator for her company. And it's the running joke that I had about 8 email addresses because I was like all over the industry and I was just everyone's right-hand person. But then I also met other freelancers and colleagues who also had not found the right fit. So that was my case as well. In our industry, it's really, really high stress, and the bigger the project, the more stressful it is, obviously. But that leaves room for authentic leadership in a great way, but many bosses don't quite get it right. And so we really set out to create a company that produces events that feel as good as they look to everybody that we touch.
So one of the big ways that authenticity helped us solve something is we saw as a core problem in the event industry for our clients, and that was the issue of transparency. As Tina mentioned, as we work on larger scale and more high profile projects, it becomes necessary to communicate clearly and effectively, and not be afraid to have difficult conversations about budgets and changes that need to be made or problems that need to be solved. But coming from a place of genuinely wanting the best for our clients and not being concerned solely with our bottom line has really given us the power to approach those conversations in a much easier way. The other way that we really kind of try to represent authenticity with our clients is helping them find their voice and helping them create programming and events that really represent who they are to their audience. And then Sina's going to tell you a little bit more about the biggest difference for us, and that one of the main motivators was creating a better experience for ourselves and our employees, because that's our everyday. And clients are very important, but we felt that we had a bigger, we're able to make a bigger impact in our daily lives and those of the people that work for us.
So we adopted 3 pillars of authentic leadership that we take into account when we're doing events and also just in our everyday life. And the first one is modeling our work ethic. So in our industry, we have really long hours, and sometimes you're doing days back-to-back of events that you have to be relying on very little sleep. And so for us, when we actually hire people, you guys when we hire people, we're also the ones that are like there first thing in the morning, and we're also there the last ones to leave at night, and we really make sure that we're doing all the jobs that we are asking others to do, because it really is that key piece when you're relying on a lot of people to also work while they're sleep deprived. And so it's really important for us that we're also doing that as well.
The kind of second pillar of authentic leadership for us is something that Sherelle does so well every time, and that is just providing genuine validation and recognition. It's really easy to send out one thank you email with 20 people CC'd after an event, but for us it's really important to individually thank people for the jobs that they do. And I am just as grateful for the delivery guys, the people who show up to help us move furniture, the people who are there helping us collect the trash at the end of the event, as I am for the client who gives us a check. And we really try to build a team that we really do truly appreciate. And it seems simple, but meaning coming from a genuine place of appreciation and taking the time to say that is something that's very important to us and has always stood out when other people did it for us in our previous working roles.
Okay, and the last pillar is really putting development first. So for ourselves, we're really focused on how can we be better all the time, but also figuring out what our colleagues, other vendors that we work with, and also our friends that we have connected with over the years, what do they actually want to be doing? Because we ask for a lot of favors, as I'm sure many of us do in the room. And it's really important that the people that we're asking the favors from, we really get to understand what do they want to be doing more of, and how can we help them get to be doing more of that said thing. So one of the, we just did SpaceX's holiday party, and so that was something where it was for 7,000 people, and it's a really expansive event, so you have to produce a lot of volume. And so one of our very good friends was a bar, he owns his own bar company now, but he actually did that for us, and it was really expansive. But then now he really loves to create these very intricate processes that don't really happen well in high volume. And so, but now we found out that that's really what he wants to do, and now he's actually Elon Musk's personal bartender and is building a bar in his home. So it's like really, that was a really good example of that, but it doesn't always happen quite like that. But that was really, so yeah, and we still ask him for favors, but now he's a lot more willing to do favors for us.
Yeah, so just kind of to summarize that, the biggest thing for us in doing the hard work of starting a business, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy. It's a huge undertaking. But for us, it was really important to take a holistic approach to our business ecosystem and treat our vendors, our employees, and our clients all with the same type of attitude, and really be genuine and authentic in our desire to work with them, learn from them, and kind of just create an environment where everyone can align and share the workload and just kind of raise everyone up.
Okay, so now I'm really excited to hear more from Dr. Dina Brown about how we can continue to develop our own leadership as well. So, thank you.
Can you hear me? Is it good? It's not working. Okay.
Testing.
I don't need that anyway. When I was young, I was gonna say, when I was little, when I was young, she said, oh gosh. When I was young, you know what I used to get in trouble for all the time? You're too loud. You're too loud. You know, there are people, authentically, there are people who actually have low voices and people who have high voices. Now let's think about what we do to people who are not like us. You're too loud, you're too loud. I'm not too loud. This is the way God made me. My voice is just higher than yours. So we do have to be really, really careful sometimes about the things that we say to people. You know, someone is quiet and we immediately say, what's wrong with her? Or what's wrong with him? It's just interesting because we base how we believe people should be according to how we are, or what our perception is of what is right, wrong, good, or bad, when the reality of it is that we, each and every one of us, are who we are meant to be. And we're just sharpening our saws and smoothing out our rough edges, and hopefully we have an opportunity to come to a Leadership in Heels event, because after that we're just going to be badass. But all of us are different, and I think that sometimes by the time we become an adult, we have been diluted by the things that have been said to us, or more importantly, by the things that have not been said to us. We have had experiences in our life that have caused us to make shifts in order to accommodate the individuals who are speaking to us, about us, or even behind our back. And so then we begin to hide and wear a mask, hence becoming inauthentic, not always being comfortable, being open and honest about who we are, what we feel, more importantly, what we want, or what we don't want. And we start to navigate through being less than our authentic self. So before Dr. Dina and I get started, I want you to take those expensive brochures sitting on your table. That yes, I know it's 2018 and we should just go all electronic. But like the lovely lady said about individually thanking you, which is old school to many, I still like my little Leadership in Heels brochures. So open them up and look at them and pretend like you're paying attention. And there is a card in there that is today's table exercise. And in today's table exercise, what we do at each event is you have an opportunity to start opening up your mind and your thoughts about what it is that you want to get out of today's event. Because this event is about you. Dr. Dina and I are here for you. And the question of the day is, describe a time or an experience when you were less than authentic to avoid conflict, confrontation, or hurting someone's feelings. In other words, think about a time when you wanted to go into that office and ask for that raise, but you weren't really sure how to do it. You weren't sure that you were going to get it. You weren't confident enough about it, so you didn't have the conversation. Think about a time when your girlfriend did something that you really didn't like, but you weren't sure about how she would receive the conversation, so you actually didn't have it. Think about a time when you had a disappointment in your life. Someone hurt your feelings and you suffered in silence because you were unafraid to tell that person how it made you feel. Or more importantly, you were ashamed of feeling what you felt. Think about a time when you were leading individuals and you went home and you thought to yourself, geez Louise, what is happening here? I say that in the office all the time. I say, what's happening right now? When something is happening that causes you a level of frustration and you're not comfortable enough to really say what it is that you want to say, think about a time when there was a risk that you wanted to take, but because of the fear, you said that you really didn't want to do something that you actually wanted to do. There are so many opportunities that each and every one of us have when we are less than authentic. And we have a tendency to really look at that as something negative. we start to think about it in a manner that says, well, I tell the truth. Well, no, you don't, not always. We don't always tell the truth. And then think about a time when you have been authentic, and authenticity has caused you some problems. When you actually have said something to someone, and it wasn't what you said, but the way that you said it. So authenticity can work against you and for you. And today I am going to ask you to take some time out right now, be open and honest with yourself and with one another, and then create some dialogue so that you have the questions that are going to stimulate this room, and Dr. Dina and I will attempt to answer. So pull out your table exercises. I encourage you to get started. You have about 10 minutes, I think, Judy? Is that right? About 10 minutes, and then we'll come back. Dr. Dina and I will get started, and we'll start to answer your questions and dialogue for today's experience. Thank you. Yes? I would encourage you to write it down and then talk with one another at your table. So this is open conversation now. Write down your answers to the question, and then you guys share with one another at the table. Okay? We'll come back in 10 minutes. The table exercise out?
Yes.
All right, so Trini, you want to lead up the program? Okay.
In my marriage,
And I'm hoping that there's someone at your table or that one of you would be willing to share and ask questions about the challenges that you've had where you've been less than authentic. But so without further ado, I want to bring up Dr. Dina. We're going to get started on our Q&A and our panel questionnaire. And this is an opportunity for you guys to actually be interactive. So we'll get started. I have a few questions for Dr. Dina, and then also as we navigate through this interview, it's an opportunity for you to participate. Dr. Dina Brown, first thing that I want to tell you about her is she is a woman who brings energy to any environment. She is full of life, and her primary goal, while she has never actually said this to me, is to truly, truly, truly help us shift into the space in which we desire to be. She takes the initiative to poke into your situation and help you to become better. She has the tools that are equipped to provide you with some steps that you can take to be even greater than where you are. And her goal is to help you elevate yourself and enjoy the experience. She is an author, a speaker, and a leadership coach. And in 2017, she founded the Lead Her Shift movement to help women create systems to shift and gain clarity about their why and build confidence in and outside of the workplace. Aside from being featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, her most important role is being a mother of her 16-year-old son, Xavier. I hired Dina personally as a consultant in our organization to help me deal with some cultural changes that needed to be made in the organization, to help me to identify opportunities where I could help grow my leadership team in ways that I was actually struggling with. I have some dynamic people on my team, but many of them are organically grown. And with that comes some challenges that they don't even know, because they aren't able to bring outside experiences into the organization and make recommendations for how we can continue to improve. Not only that, but you have people sometimes who are working exceptionally hard and yet not yielding the results that you as a leader would desire. And then there comes this frustration. People are working hard, not feeling appreciated, and not necessarily enjoying what they're doing and experiencing what they're doing. What I love about what Sina and Annalisa said, and I have been to one of their events, and it was absolutely amazing. And we do our best to create an experience here at Leadership in Heels, is the fact that they said that from the beginning to the end, no matter who it is in the room, we want everyone to understand how valued they are, and we want them to have a wonderful experience. Now that doesn't mean that it's not going to be hard or sometimes stressful, but at the end of the day, it should be satisfying. And Dina came into the organization and helped me to identify not only individuals, but opportunities for improvement, and has been individually coaching my leaders so that they can shift into a higher position, they can shift into a greater experience, and that they can shift to be more influential, and also so that they can shift so that their accomplishments are aligned with my expectations. It's really been a pleasure having her on the team, and I would encourage you within your own organizations, and if you are looking for someone to coach at every level within the organization to shift your organization in a direction that you desire, Dr. Dina Brown is someone that you should consider. Without further ado, I'd like to ask Dr. Dina to come up to say a few words about herself and then to join me on the stage so that we can start the interview today. We're going to stop right at about 5:10 to 9. So throughout the interview, it is an open session for you to ask your questions. Don't wait for the proper time. The time is now. Dr. Dina? Let me see shoes, though. You gotta do the
Good morning, good morning. Bring that down a little bit. Or Julianne's gonna come get me for not being in front of that. It is not only a pleasure and an honor to stand before you today, but the fact that you look so amazing gives me somebody great to look out at. Because nobody wants to look out of a room at some unattractive people. So thank you. Give yourself a hand. Give yourself a hand. So, one of the things that we do have to do anytime that we are in a space where we have to connect with people, we have to realize that part of that goal is building a relationship. Part of that goal is also getting over yourself and realizing that you are part of the experience. And that's one of the things that I love to do. My background really briefly is being an educator over 20 years, and the last 10 years, I was a school principal. Yes, this crazy was in the school every day, and they allowed me to run schools and change lives and connect with people. But there came a time when my purpose and my passion no longer aligned with my profession. And so I wasn't as authentic as I could possibly be because I was living a lie. And I began to die from the inside out. Because during the day, I was super principal, dynamic, great. But when I left there, on the inside, I couldn't wait to get home and to climb into the bed because I realized that there was a disconnect. So when I think about what it means to be authentic, what I want you to understand is that authentic is original. So I have to really meditate and marinate on who did God call me to be. And I realized that although I loved what I did, it no longer fit for me anymore because there was something bigger out there. There was another space for me. And I actually overstayed my welcome in the space that I was. And that's why I was out of alignment. That's why life was becoming miserable. Yes, it was great pay, great travel, and it was power and position, but there was no peace. So being authentic is really about protecting your peace. Balance is truly overrated. Seek harmony, okay? Because when you start with something that's out of balance, you keep putting the same things on both sides, you will never get balance. So seek harmony. So some days, you're gonna work 15 hours. Yes, you're gonna do that. But then don't forget the self-care part when you go back and restore and go back and fill your cup. So what I love to do, what I realized that in order to help and support people, I have to start with me. So all the things I get to speak about and that show I'm going to discuss are parts of the things that I learned. I learned as a leader. I learned as a wife and an ex-wife, praise God. I learned as a mother. And I've learned as a sister and a friend. Because there's 9 of us in our family, 6 girls and 3 boys, and I'm number 7. So you can imagine, there was a lot of authenticity in our house. So I look forward to engaging in a dynamic conversation with you, and I encourage you to, again, don't be afraid to ask questions. Michelle knows we have some pretty dynamic conversations about what to do, whether we're in the workspace. And if you don't believe that part of being real is being holistic, who you are at home should be who you are at work and how you show up at church. And before you say something out of pocket, would you praise God with those lips? I'm just going to say it. All right, so are you guys ready to get started? All right.
Dina and I have a lot of similarities in our personality and our character, and then we have a lot of differences. And one of the things that I found with you is your ability to keep it real with me. We talked when we first really decided jointly, and really it was Dina's idea to come in and help me in the organization because literally I was drowning. I was in the middle of 3 mergers all at the same time. I had some major expansions going on in the organization, some personal things going on with my family, and doing a neglect of myself. And one of the things that I do know is I know when I am not my best. And so I authentically shared with Dina that I'm not at my best. And one of the things that I believe when you are being true to yourself is that you seek the support that you need from the right people at the time in which you need it. So I'm going to say that again. You seek the support that you need with the right people at the time that you need it. Because so often we wait. Or we pick up the phone and call the girlfriend that we're gossiping with, and when you hang up the phone you don't feel any better. Or we suffer in silence. Either way, I had the courage to talk to Dr. Dina about what I was going through, and then, of course, being authentic, she said, what you really need is me. Oh, okay. So from there started our professional journey together. We already had a personal journey and together as friends. So she's had an opportunity to come into the organization, and while it is a very successful organization, and I have a number of people who I work with, several of them are here who are absolutely amazing, and there's absolutely no way that we could do what we do, I could do what I do without them. She was able to help identify where there were opportunities for improvement and immediately started to activate on them. So without that, without further ado, I want to get right into the conversation about authenticity. And Dina and Maria, Sina and Annalisa already talked about what it means to be authentic, to be original, to be your original self. And then I shared with you some of the reasons why I believe people are less than authentic. So what I'd like to do is to go right into the audience, and through your table conversations or just the thoughts that you're going through now, can anyone start us off with a question about authenticity and a need that you have that Dina and I can answer?
Michelle does.
Oh, Michelle. Yes.
I warned her before.
Oh, really?
It's really good.
She's like, I remember that. I shared a personal experience, and I think, I shared a personal experience I had with authenticity, and in our discussion, it was me being authentic to a close friend of mine from a personal situation. I'm recently a widow. And I felt like she was not there for me through the period of time that my husband was sick. And I avoided conflict by not being authentic with her and approaching and asking why you weren't there for me. And so the discussion we had at the table was, is authenticity defined as, facing your fears and being vulnerable?
That's good. So, first of all, I would say it definitely is defined as facing your fears and being vulnerable. I think in order to be authentic, oftentimes you have to be vulnerable. And then you also have to be ready for the fact that the other side may not be ready to be authentic. And so while you may come to the table prepared to be authentic, what happens when the other party is not? So you reach to a friend and you share with a friend that you were not there for me, and then the friend is silent. How do you handle that? I think that you have to first and foremost be willing to not only share what it is that you expected, but also share how it made you feel. Because sometimes we just ask a question and people don't actually have an answer. Or they don't really know why they didn't do what they should have done. But when you start to talk about how someone's action or the lack thereof made you feel, then you have an ability to connect. And from there you can make a decision. Because if you're not there for me as a friend, the way that I expected you to be there, sometimes it might just be that I didn't know how to be there, and therefore I avoided being there at all. But now you go further into how did that make you feel? And so it's very important that not only you're open and honest, but to your point in your question, Michelle, that you're vulnerable. Dr. Dina, what do you think?
I concur what she mentioned, but I also want you to take a moment and step into their space for a second. And that, especially grief and illness, is very difficult for individuals. So when you put yourself in their shoes sometimes, you think, I expect you to be there, but maybe they couldn't. So are you also accepting them and their authentic self? Because that's really their authentic truth, that they don't handle those types of situations well. They might not have communicated it to you the right way or the way that you expected them to. So I like what you said about expectations, and that to not negate their feelings, because also they have feelings as part of that relationship. But would have been great to say, I expected you to be there, or I needed you to be there. Not what you didn't do, but here's what I need from you as my friend. Here's what I expect from you as my friend. And in going forward with this relationship, I need to know that you're going to be there in the high times, in the low times, and the in-between times, because that's my expectation for my friends.
And I like that what Dr. Dina is saying, because sometimes we're not clear on our expectations. And I have to share with you, many of you know, because she was a woman in business, my cousin, Shavada Nader. My cousin lost her father a few years ago, my mother's brother. And during her time of grief, I wasn't there for her the way she needed me to be there. I had no idea that I wasn't there for my cousin, and I adore her. Recently, my cousin came to me, and she said to me, and she called me Big Cousin, she said, Big Cousin, I have to tell you that I've been carrying a resentment because you weren't there for me the way that I needed you to be there for me when my father was dying. Yes, I know that you care, but I wanted you by my side. and you weren't there. And I said to her, understanding what she wanted, not understanding, if she had asked me, why weren't you there for me? I don't know that I would have even known how to answer that question. But when she shared with me what it is that she expected from me, it brought clarity to our relationship. I was able to authentically apologize because it is never my desire to not meet her expectation. But sometimes we're not clear on what the expectation is, which is what Dr. Dina is saying. So I think part of being authentic is not only sharing what it is that we wanted from someone or asking a question, but making sure that they're clear on the other side of what you expect.
And then also just moving forward with that, I believe what Maya Angelou says, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. So it also, you have to reflect then on all your past interactions and all your past instances. When things in life happens, we want to react instead of respond. When we respond, it takes that time to become intentional. We think about it. So sometimes we have to get out of our own feelings and say, okay, if this wasn't me, and what if I did? And then look at yourself. Did you ever? Have I ever? And so when you start thinking it from that perspective, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying, it's wrong. What I'm saying is that when you become intentional, and does this relationship matter to you? What's the value? What's the ROI on the relationship? And if it's worth it and you have a history and it means a lot to you, then it's worth the investment to say, let's have another conversation. Maybe I didn't convey to you what I really needed. I need to convey this to you in this way, in this manner, be very succinct and clear. And then how they respond after you've expressed that, then you have a decision to make.
And I would piggyback off of that because, sometimes we think, and I heard what you said, Michelle, and I consider you and I very close friends. But one of the reasons why I know we're very close friends is that we wouldn't be having a conversation around whether or not one another was there for each other. So sometimes part of not having a deep, authentic conversation is because we don't want to find out that what we believe to be true is not true. I mean, sometimes we don't have that conversation around why we're not getting treated the way we want to be treated at work because maybe we're not doing what we need to do. We start off a conversation with the fact that, this person really cares about me, but their behavior doesn't exhibit care. So it's very, very important, and when you talk about being vulnerable, it takes you to a deep place where you have to sometimes then, as Dr. Dina said, reevaluate the relationship. I had a conversation with a very close friend about a disappointment that I experienced. And one of the things that I ended up finding out is that we actually weren't very close. I'm just saying. So I think that we can...
It's almost like dating sometimes. You're going out with someone and you think that you're exclusive, and you're not, but you're afraid to ask them. No, in all honesty, you're afraid to ask because you don't really want to know. You want to keep pretending that you're the only one. Right, guys? You want to pretend that? And so, and in that space, you're just like, I want to know, but I don't want to know. As long as I don't ask, I can keep disillusioning myself. And that's the same way that you show up at work when you don't want to ask about a raise, the same way when you want to talk about your performance as well. Like if I don't ask, then I don't have to really know, and I can keep pretending that I'm everything that I should be and everything is what it is.
Well, I guess we got off to a bad start. What's the next question? Thank you, Michelle. Sure. Next question? Sure.
So I know, I'm imagining that there are many women in this room who've experienced what I have on many occasions, which is to work in an environment where there are few women. And I am still to this day, after 45 years in business, amazed that I can walk into a room and the assumption from the men in the room is often that I'm the subordinate. Well, and there are ladies in this room who know, no, I'm the boss. And sometimes I say that very clearly. Let me say this, he works for me, and he works for me, and he works for me. So if you want to have this conversation, I'm the one you have to speak to. But there are other times that I let that go entirely. And then I feel like I was selling myself out. So I just wonder where that experience comes from, or other ways maybe to handle it than maybe being right in somebody's face.
Wow.
Well, I always got a little saying, Well, 50% of knowing who you are is knowing who you're not. And when you get very clear about who you are, then you begin to show up as that. If you have coffee in your cup right now, and you shook it a little bit, what's gonna spill out is coffee. Water's not gonna come out of it. So when you get shaken up, what's gonna come out of you? There's two things that disturb me a little bit about you sharing, again, because we're transparent, and those people that know me know that I kind of go right to the point, is the fact that you needed to tell them, I'm the boss, I'm the boss. Well, just walk in it, show in it, act in it. So the fact that you had to tell them in that manner means that you're not clear that you're the boss. And you might want to think about that, because then your behavior actually will represent and other people will follow and receive you in that manner. So just because they don't believe it or something, maybe you have to look at yourself again and say, am I showing up as the boss? Am I speaking in that manner? Am I walking in that manner? Does my attitude convey that I'm the boss? Because when you walk in a room, you should own it.
Well, I can also say, contrary to that, while I agree with what you're saying, I've worked in a male-dominated environment the majority of my career. I mean, right now we have more female partners than we have had before, but quite frankly, the men run the house. And I'm the second in command in the firm, and I experience that on an all-day, every-day, real-time basis. And I know when I walk into the room, I own it, so I don't know what. But I also know that the reality of it is that there are experiences that we go through as women that men do not. And there are opportunities when, or times when you walk into a room or you're sitting into a meeting and the individuals that you're in the meeting with automatically turn to the man, or they automatically, they make eye contact with the man and they're having a conversation with the man. There is a graceful way, and I understand exactly what you're saying, to your point, to be able to take your power back, because I think that is what you're talking about. And I can hear in your voice that it's not necessarily that you're trying to demand the fact that you're the boss, but how do we pivot into a space so that we can stay true to who we are? We don't allow ourselves to dilute who we are, and then do it with grace. And sometimes when we're frustrated, we're not always graceful. So I understand that. But I can say in my experiences, when that has happened to me yesterday, really did. When it happens to me, I'm able to really shift the room by the way that I respond. So when somebody turns to one of my subordinates because they happen to be a guy, or one of my colleagues because they happen to be a guy, and they're talking about a decision that needs to be made about the business outside of client services, because I'm the CFO and the COO of the organization. So that's my area of influence. Now, I don't service clients, so if we're talking about a client matter, then the client servicing partner, that's his jurisdiction. But if we're talking about an operational matter, then that's my jurisdiction. But what will happen is that someone will assert themselves as if they're the person who was in charge of that situation. And gracefully, after they finish their conversation, I might say to them, we appreciate your point, but that's not actually what we're talking about right now. Or we appreciate your input, but that's not actually the direction that I would like to go. Or I appreciate your comment, but I would prefer to share what it is that I would really like to accomplish today. And so in that moment, you shift and you regain your power. And then you don't actually have to say, I'm the boss. You are the boss. And that will continue to happen to us women, in my opinion, to the end of time. But we have to learn how to do that in a graceful way, and I appreciate what you're asking, because out of frustration, sometimes we're labeled as the bull in the china shop, or some other terms that we don't all like, and we're not comfortable in how we need to show up, so we then dilute ourselves. So through our conversation, asserting ourselves in a graceful and humble way, and bringing clarity to the room as to who is the primary decision maker, you're able to assume your power and clear the confusion in the room.
Exactly what I said. because that's exactly what I meant by the 50-50 rule, is that you don't have to say that.
Right.
You do it, so at that time, because you hold on to it, because you're not reacting. You're not allowing them to pull you in. And like you said, you mentioned, I just let it go, to do that. And that's what I was speaking to about giving that piece away. But I love how you mentioned, at the end, when you're finished, okay, because I don't need to exert myself or force myself into the middle of the conversation because I know that I own the space in the end.
And sometimes you may not even be the boss. I can be in the room with my boss, and he'll assert himself. But that's not your area of jurisdiction. So sometimes he may say something, and I say, well, actually, that's not what we're talking about. Because he wants to assert his power. He's powerful and he's in charge, but not of this. And so sometimes we have to reshape people. And we have to do it in a respectful way. But I think that when we do that, then it brings comfort into your ability to be authentic. And we're not focusing on the fact that, you know, the room is not moving in a manner in which we desire, and now it starts to take our attention away from our objective.
That's a good question.
Any other questions? Yes, in the back room. Julianne, can we get some water? Thank you.
Good morning. I had a question about your input, suggestions, advice. Having experienced a few failed relationships both personally and professionally, so business partnerships that had to have difficult conversations that eventually ended in separation and personal, I am yet faced with another environment where that difficult conversation needs to be had. And I recognize I'm coming from a place of fear for not wanting the relationship to end. However, how can I approach someone in a social masterminding group that I run about boundaries being stepped over, where organically the expectations have shifted from business masterminding to social masterminding to now people in the group are approaching me saying, this isn't what we signed up for, how can we reel it in? And the person I need to have that conversation with is, you know, dear and near to me. And I know that I'm trying to not bring the past fears and the results of having those confrontations or confrontations, not knowing what's going to happen in the front, even though we're trying to learn from our past.
I thought you said confrontations. That was really good.
First, after we finish answering this question, I want you to take that video, pop it on social media, tag them, and then everything will be resolved.
That's authentic.
You know, candidly, I couldn't digest everything that you said because it was a lot. But what I can say that I got out of it is that if there are relationships that have been broken and ultimately people are overstepping their boundaries, and this has been a learning for me, there is power in being honest with people about what you need. Similar to what we were talking about with Michelle's question. And when there are failures in relationships as a result of boundaries being overstepped, and I think that really has a lot to do with why relationships break down. Ultimately, it's an issue around boundaries. It's an issue around the fact that someone is doing something or not doing something that is important to you. And we have not made it clear of what our boundaries are, and therefore relationships are broken. And it took me some time to really learn how to not only set boundaries, but be clear in a loving and kind way about my boundaries. So what I would say, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Dina, is when you find yourself in a situation where you know within yourself it's not working, it's not right, and not when it's failing. Because see, what happens is it's not working early in the relationship. You get on a job, you know you don't like something, and you don't say anything. And if you had addressed it in day 2, 3, week 1, month 1, you wouldn't be at your annual review mad about a conversation because you never said anything. And this goes both for the employer and the employee. You know, you get into a relationship, man and woman, you're not happy about the way the person shows up. And it can be literally how they show up, how they dress, how they talk, how they walk, whether they are, you know, respectful of your time or whatever the situation is. Feeling disregarded, ignored, whatever it is. And then you take it, you stomach it, because you want to see where it's going to go. Well, it's not going to go anywhere because you didn't make it clear of what it is that you expected, because you were worried about being demanding or asking for too much, or, you know, you just want to see, well, maybe, it's no maybe. It really isn't. And so I think that the key is that we learn how to set boundaries. And part of being authentic is being open and honest about not only our expectation, but what is not working. Everybody knows, I've been single a long time. And I've had a zillion relationships. Some good, some bad. Every single one of them, as far as I'm concerned, have been outstanding. Because I've had an opportunity to learn more about myself. And from that, I'm able to share that. And so when I go and before I start a relationship now, whether I'm at work, whether I'm a friend, a man, whatever it is, I'm very clear about the things that are important to me. Now, if it's not important, it doesn't matter. I'm not a big foodie, so I don't really care what we eat. But if it's important to me, then I share it. And so I think that when we start to get clear about what's important to us, people have a right to choose. Because sometimes we force people into making a choice that they don't know they're making. So it's very, very important that you are clear about your expectations, that you follow up and that you follow through. And that it's not only about you, but when you share with someone, I don't have too many things that I require, but foundationally, I love God. Now, you don't have to have the same relationship with God that I do. But you have to respect the fact that I do have that relationship. And it's non-compromisable. So when I don't know what to do, I go to the Word. I'm not going to banter back and forth. We're not going to get into any long debate. I'm going to pray. That's what I do. So if a person can't respect that, and they want to banter back and forth, I'm not really going to participate in that. Well, that can cause conflict for a person who likes to argue. Because they want to argue. I'm not going to do that. So all that I'm saying is that you want to make sure that you've set appropriate boundaries, and you can always set them no matter where you are in a relationship. You can always restart. And that you're clear, and that you're following up and you're following through.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And not only with the boundaries, and there were so many just nuggets there. I hope you're like jotting down some notes. Is that the communication part? Because you can have expectations, but if you don't communicate them, then they're mute. I mean, literally, they're mute. One of the things that I draw on when you first started sharing is that what is the relationship like? You said this is a close friend, so do they know you? Do they know that if you're going to come to them with love and this confrontation to address something, that you're not doing it out of spite, that you're doing it because you care? And ladies understand this, and I'll use a lot of analogies to clothes and shoes and things like that because we understand that. Would you let your best friend go out of the house with the wrong outfit on the right night where she's going to meet her friends?
Some of us would.
Okay, and so transferring
Outfit on the right night. Don't let me go out with the wrong outfit.
and because this is business, and if you don't think that it's real, nothing's realer than the cash flow that impacts your business. And that can also impact your personal life because, no romance without finance, goes there. So there's so many interrelated parts to that, but at the core of what you're asking is the communication portion. So for you, here's just kind of a real strategy to do. It may be difficult for you to confront, so maybe it's more in your head. Maybe you've built up this whole conversation. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I have a whole conversation with somebody, and I never talk to them, but they gonna say this, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna say, and you did all of this, but you realize that 80% of what we're scared of doesn't ever happen. So we're wasting far too much time over there. So what about practicing what you're going to say to them? And then you are comfortable, so really it's about your comfort level in addressing it with them. They probably already know. Alert, spoiler alert, they probably know, and they're going to continue as long as you allow it. Mm-hmm. People will do what you allow, and people will treat you the way that you train them to treat you, okay? So, when you love yourself and you're confident about what you have to say, and you communicate clearly and authentically, guess what people begin to do to you? They will do the same. They'll mirror it back to you. So take a risk, and if they're really your friend, they really care about you, they'll receive it in love because, like you said, I love even using that term, I need to have a confrontation with you. Here's some things that we need to address because you don't want them to continue, because I don't want, it's like my kids, I don't want somebody else talking about my kids. So let me bring it to you. Let me help you fix it, because if somebody else brought that to me and talked about you, we would have a situation. So think of it and just kind of shift. It's like a mind shift for you to be able to address it with them.
And you know, I want to go back to one thing when you talk about, you know, pivotal points that you want to walk away with. In order to be authentic, it takes care. And so when you care about the relationship, then you want to be honest. And I think that sometimes we need to first start off with what our intentional outcome is when we're facing a difficult conversation. I'm going to say that again. Be clear about your intentional outcome. Because when sometimes we go right into a tough conversation, a person, depending on their emotional maturity, can be defensive immediately. But when you start the conversation off sharing with them, first of all, it is my intention that you and I have the best relationship possible. And it is my intention that we are able to be very successful together. It is my intention that we build a successful organization. It is my intention that I raise a wonderful individual. That I am the best wife or the best girlfriend. That I am an amazing friend or daughter. So when you are clear about your intention in a positive way, it sort of takes some of the stress that can immediately stir up out of the room. And then you go into the conversation. And whenever the conversation is moving in a manner that is less than positive, go back to your intention. Because you can actually shift the conversation just by a few small words that you use with care. And that person, even though they may be uncomfortable or they may become defensive because you're asking something of them, and they have to first acknowledge that they're not giving it. And people don't like to hear things that they consider to be negative. So when you're telling somebody something that you want, that means to them, they're not providing it. And the first thing most of us do is we go into an excuse. We start talking about why we didn't do it, or what we meant to do, or what our intentions were. And when you find that they're being defensive, go back to your objective. So I wanted to ask a question. We talked about, even just in this space here, we're talking about being authentic, we're talking about setting boundaries, we're talking about being clear of our expectation and making sure that we are communicating with care. But can we just talk a little bit about the difference between pivoting and shifting?
Oh yes, that's one of my favorite. How many of you are basketball fans? Well, how many of you took your kids to basketball training or something to that effect? Well, those of you that are familiar with the pivot, or even a pivot as a machine, what you do is it helps you turn. So when I thought about the concept of pivoting and shifting, I imagine someone who has to anchor their left leg and they're looking around to see where they need to go next. And that anchor is great to look at your historical data, your historical knowledge, and see that. The turning is saying, okay, is it me? Or do I actually, who's open? Who does it fit better? But sometimes we stay there so long, keep looking for somebody else, that we don't take the shot. Because to take the shot when it's your turn, you have to actually shift. You have to move. You have to let go of that space, that comfort zone. And oftentimes we don't shift because we have to become accountable for the end result. And so as long as, because here's again, I played sports, oh, nobody was open. I couldn't pass, they stole the ball, nobody was open. So it wasn't your fault, they didn't get open, they didn't run the play right. But if you had shifted and took the shot and you missed, then you would have said, oh my gosh, everybody, it was a winning game. But what if you actually made it? So when it depends on what you're thinking about, those people that train and they practice and they spend inordinate amounts of time making sure that when they take the shot, that the majority of the time it's going to go in, they're comfortable in that space. What you have to do is get comfortable shifting instead of getting stuck in that pivot, because that will cause you to miss opportunities for growth that are incredible for you.
Any other questions? Yes.
One of the words that you use quite often is not to dilute yourself. So that was a takeaway from looking at a great opportunity for the curious are being abrasive, and relationships are so important. So how can we bring that conversation back to this person and help them understand that there's a difference between being a strong woman and being, we can't have a team of Kobe Bryants.
Well, first, when I talk about dilution, I talk about your originality of who it is that you were made to be, not your characteristics. And so there's a difference between our characteristics because we can take on different characteristics depending on the situation. But when you start looking at your originality of who you are and shifting the originality of what your needs are. So we all have basic needs. If you have a need to be heard or if you have a need to be fed, whatever your needs are. So sometimes we give up our needs for the sake of others, and that's what I mean by dilution. Now, when you talk about dealing with someone who has a strong personality and someone who is not willing to pass the ball or cannot be heard, and how do you deal with those challenging conversations in an authentic and meaningful way? I think that first you need to be able to go to that person and let that person know that you also would not expect for someone to not be strong and say what they want to say, but you also want to make sure that you're being heard. And I think sometimes we actually just need to be clear on what it is that we want. I mean, if you have an individual that has a strong personality, you may need to share with them that I can appreciate who you are as a person, but what I'm asking for is the space to be appreciated as well. And when you talk to somebody directly, and you're talking about how do you deal with relationships, especially at work, where you have a situation and you have to have a conversation up with your boss, or you have to have a conversation, with your spouse or with your child, and it's a difficult conversation. Sometimes you need to make it clear that you need to have the space to effectively communicate. And when you say that, without letting them know that I need you to shut up, stop talking, you're doing too much. Because really that's what you need them to do. But you're asking for space. And so what you're saying is that people are different. I may not be like you, but that doesn't mean that I can't be effective. So going to someone strong like myself, I appreciate it more when someone will approach me, even in the midst of their fear and intimidation, and they're open and honest with me about their needs. Those are the individuals that I appreciate and that I respect more. And sometimes people feel like when you're in a position of power that you don't want to be told. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the comments that were made about, well, people are just intimidated. That's not true. It's not true. It might be that person's perception because they actually are hiding behind fear. Or they haven't necessarily matured emotionally so that they're not so hard. I was in that space, so I know what that feels like. That was emotional immaturity. And so you can help bridge that gap by having the conversation around the fact that you'd like to have some space to be able to be heard. And when you ask for that space, they're going to know that they're over-communicating. And let them know, because you care about them, that there are others that would like to have the space to be able to communicate with you. And as you start to do that, people start to think about what it is that they're not doing, or what it is that they need to do in order to garner more meaningful relationships. Before we go on, because we always want to be respectful of time, I need to pull some names for the raffle. And then if those of you have additional questions, we'll ask those questions right before we wrap up. But we always want to be respectful because we're close to 9 o'clock. No matter how intense, you need to be clear on what it is that you expect for yourself and from others. And then be intentional about garnering the relationships both at work and at home that are going to yield you the highest gain. And by doing that, you need to be open about what your expectations are. Even when you go on a job interview, don't sell yourself for them to hire you, but be clear on what you're getting hired into. When you're going into a relationship, for those of you who are single and don't want to be, don't sell yourself so that you just want to get a date. Be intentional about getting the husband that you want. Really, and when you find yourself in the midst of conflict, because because relationships bring conflict. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a part of life. Be clear on it so that the conflict doesn't become confrontation, and the confrontation doesn't become destructive in the relationship. So it is important that you face the things that feel conflicting within yourself, and that you're clear and you set the boundaries for the others, and you make sure that they understand your expectations. And the last thing is be willing to make a decision. What that means is that when you have done everything that you need to do to exhibit self-care for yourself in consideration of others, be clear on the fact that sometimes relationships shift. And what that means is that you have found yourself in a situation that is not good for you. A job that is not the job for you. A friendship that is not the friendship that you desire. Now, I am not suggesting that you give up on that. But I'm going to tell you, I had a conversation with a very close friend this morning who asked me a simple question that aggravated my nerves. And the reason why it aggravated my nerves is because she is my friend. And as my friend, I don't expect for her to ask me if I ever want her to be there for me. I just want her to be there. So what that made me feel inside was not positive. But as opposed to making a decision and walking around with a resentment, what I did was I was clear with her. And I shared with her that first and foremost, you are my friend. And I love you. And everywhere I am, I want you to be. So we don't ever have to have a conversation about whether or not you're invited to the party. Because you always are. And so I think that sometimes we just need to be clear, even though it may not yield us the desired outcome. Dr. Dita, can you give me your
That was
take?
good. That was so powerful.
Yeah.
I came up with an acronym for REAL. I know we've been talking a lot about leadership, but again, leadership starts with your own personal leadership. So this acronym works across the board, whether it's personal, professionally, or even spiritually. And that for REAL, the R stands for relatability. How relatable are you? How do you communicate? How do you actually connect? And the E is for empowered. How do you empower yourself to take the necessary actions? And how do you have the strength and the mindset to be able to empower others when you notice that something is not really in your wheelhouse to actually do? And the A is for accountability. You must be accountable not only for your own actions, but if someone else is doing something and it didn't work out well, then again, you might have to be accountable for theirs too if you were the boss. So taking that sense of ownership is huge, and accountability is a big word, and that's like a big capital A in the acronym. But the final is the L, is the learning. Never stop learning. You have to learn it, live it, and lead it. That's what my mentor, John Maxwell, always teaches and shares with us, is that once you begin to learn it and you live it and it becomes internalized in your day-to-day processes, then you're able to lead it and others will begin to follow you as a leader.
So with that said, I'd like to ask each and every one of you to consider a time when you've said yes and you really wanted to say no. And I encourage you from this point forward to shift into who it is that you truly want to be, and let the words that come out of your mouth and the actions that you exhibit every day be aligned with the desires of your heart and your ultimate goals for your life. Thank you so much for coming this morning. Please take the time to open up your pamphlets one more time, pull out the comment cards. I cannot do this without your comments. Please, please, please give me your comments, and have an amazing day. Thank you.